Hi, this is Brendan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and I'm here with Adam Balderstone, and we're going to be talking about Return of Condor Heroes 2006, episodes 16 through 18. In this series of episodes, Yangor ends up teaming up with a bunch of mercenaries who are working for Mongolia, and he ventures with them into a place called Passionless Valley, where he discovers Zhao Longnu is about to be married to a man named Gong Sun, who is the master of the valley. And this all leads to a big duel between Zhao Longnu, Yangor, and the master of the valley. And it results in Yangor being captured and then poisoned with the passion flowers, which cause you to suffer excruciating pain anytime you think about the person you love. And he's poisoned with so many of them that he learns he only has 36 days to live. And by the end of the episode, Yangor is still sort of imprisoned and about to be broken out by the daughter of the master of the valley, Lua. And so I think those are all the major plot points. If I left anything out, Adam, feel free to jump in.
Aside from Zhao Batong showing up and doing his thing for a bit at the beginning, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah,
and,
go ahead.
And we do have the long period where Zhao Longnu pretends not to know, to recognize Yang Gao for a while.
Well, we should probably talk about those individually because they're pretty important. And I don't think the Zhu Batong stuff, you'll see how important that becomes. But basically, they do things very differently in this version of the story than in the actual book. In the book, if I recall, you don't actually know that Zhao Longnu is marrying this guy until they've gone there and they are getting ready for the wedding feast and they see her walk out. So I feel like I feel like the book was a lot more shocking in the way that it presents it. But everybody who's watching the show probably knows the story, so maybe it's not a big deal.
The other thing with shows too, they like to keep the actors busy. It's like, you gotta have Zhao Longnu. She needs to work. She's got to do something in these episodes. So it's the book you could just set a character aside for a while, much easier.
Yeah, and it is possible I'm remembering wrong, but that's my memory of it, is that you get this shocking reveal when they go to the feast. But Zhu Batong shows up because Zhao Longnu is she gets injured near Passionless Valley, and Gong Sun basically kind of saves her, but you can sort of tell from the very beginning, I think, that he's a bit of a creep. Is it obvious to you at this point?
Yeah. He definitely comes off as a bit of a creep. I've got to say, I was surprised how full villain he went, during these episodes. I was like, wow, I knew he'd be upset, but wow, he's just completely a jerk.
What I love about Gong Sun is over the course of the story, he goes from being like kind of strange but seeming relatively normal and almost a little bit kind to just expanding into villainous territory to the point that it's like, oh my god, this guy is a horrible human being, and they do it ever so slowly over the course of the story. So I like the way that they. I don't know. It's almost like it's like they're slowly pulling back the curtain on this guy.
The fact too that his villainy is basically all driven by his passions too. Is even more so. It's like he's just the hugest hypocrite in the world.
Yeah, because that's his whole thing, is that he does. He's in the Passionless Valley where because the whole sales pitch he gives to Zhao Longnu is that he's trying to help her forget her love so that she doesn't suffer. And he's from Passionless Valley, where they're the masters of their emotions, where they don't give in to this kind of passion. And so it's interesting that he's just like, you sort of learn as the story progresses that he's just this stormy sea of passion underneath this exterior of I'm just a calm, reasonable vegetarian guy. So he's the ultimate nice guy villain. That's sort of how. That's
exactly.
Sort of,
He is very much that term entered my mind last night watching this.
And so Zhu Batong out of nowhere just kind of shows up and starts ransacking the place. He's like destroying weapon chambers. He's breaking into medicine rooms. I think there are 3 key rooms that he busts into and messes up. and they try to capture him, but he escapes, and then he ends up running away and connecting with Yangor at the Mongolian tent, where he's being introduced to these mercenaries that are going to be working under Junlun. And we get a very interesting array of mercenaries here who are kind of like, it's so there's this section in the novel which we're sort of getting to, or I guess we've just arrived at, where Yangor takes a dark turn and wants to get revenge against Guo Jing and Huang Rong for what he believes is them being responsible for the death of his father. And he joins up with this posse of really questionable people. They're all, I mean, the best one in the group is Ma Guangzhou, who in the book I think is a giant, but in this one they make him like a little person. But he's the only one that's like at all likable and respectable in any way. All the other guys are just really terrible people.
Even he's kind of obnoxious. It's like he's likable, but he's
well, he's very
he's
honest.
Still kind of trouble.
Yeah. See, the thing is, I think in the book he comes off a lot better, because in this one they make him diminutive, and the voice they give to him is sort of meant to be a little bit quirky and odd, and so whenever he gets out and he shouts at somebody, it has a much different effect than in the novel, where he's kind of this really robust figure who's doing that. So he just seems kind of more like a forthright type of character. But I noticed that they sort of swap. Some characters have really defining physical traits, and in a few key instances it feels like they've reversed them to shake things up, or I don't know. So Ma Guangzhou, like De Urba's another one. I think in the book De Urba's a really skinny monk, and in this one he's a really, really obese monk. I actually kind of think the obese De Urba works a little bit better. But these guys, they kind of remind me, if you've ever seen the very first Blackadder series, when he assembles the team of villains, and it goes horribly wrong because he's surrounded by villains that just can't. It's kind of like that, where they're all sort of, and we'll see this as this goes on, they're all kind of, they all want that like number one title as like Mongolia's champion or whatever. I forget what the actual title is, but they're all kind of they're all chasing this title as they're working together, and so they end up thwarting each other along the way. And you really see it in Jinlun's behavior over this episode, where he's constantly sitting on the fence, and he's not deciding yet if he's going to help or hurt Yangor until he knows what the outcome of the Passionless Valley situation is going to be. And clearly he wants to just ally with whoever wins. He's sort of really hedging his bets. But Zhu Batong ends up leading them on a chase that brings them to Passionless Valley. And then when they get to Passionless Valley, there's a whole thing where Zhu Batong is they're trying to capture him, and he has a big fight with what's his name, Yu Wang, I think the guy's name was, the guy with the long beard who's the eldest disciple.
Yu Wang.
And he fights with this really heavy staff, and then Yangor has a duel with him. But then when we get into sort of the meat of the Passionless Valley stuff, really what the heart of it is the sort of love triangle between Zhao Longnu, Yangor, and Gong Sun, and the love triangle between Yangor, Zhao Longnu, and Lua. Because I think it's pretty obvious, you can tell me if I'm wrong, that she's clearly in love with Yangor by the end of these 3 episodes.
Oh yeah, It was pretty. They made it pretty clear almost immediately in this series, at least.
Yeah, so she falls in love with him, and then there's this whole thing that happens where Zhao Longnu is still trying to push Yangor away for his own good, but she's being particularly cruel in how she's doing it here, where she doesn't even recognize him. She pretends that she's a woman named Miss Lu. And so she even like assumes another surname, and when he says Gugu, like, don't you recognize me? And she's like, no, I'm not your Gugu, and he's freaking out. But what I love about this scene is there's a moment where he's just having this conversation with her, and he's completely disrupting Gong Sun's wedding arrangements, and he's making a real mockery of the proceedings. And people are trying to restrain him, and he's just like, this is between me and my Gugu. He has like the outside world does not exist to him. It's only him and her. And eventually she comes around, but as a result, they have to fight Gong Sun, and they end up losing the fight, and so that results in him being captured because Gong Sun has this. Number one, they both are suffering from the passion flower poison, and they're not able to look at each other during their Jade Maiden sword play, which is it's like a crucial part of how they fight. And so anytime she looks at him, she gets hurt, and Gong Soon has this really elusive fighting style. I think they called it reverse yang in the show. And he fights with two blades basically, and it's very difficult to know what his actual attacks are. Is, I believe, what the concept was behind it. So so what did you think of these episodes?
It's good stuff. Like I said, I was very surprised at how villainous Gong Soon turns out to be, and how complicated this whole particular situation be. I wasn't sure what exactly was going to happen, but I didn't expect it to go this way. I'm really enjoying the Jin Loon and the various other retinue and their involvement in everything. They're not crucial to the plot at this point, but they're just interesting audience to an extent. And I'm liking the development with the daughter of Gong Soon. It's it's like, it's obvious she was falling in love with Yang Guo right away, but it's like I like so far, at least it's been in a very, it's the opposite of her father. It's like her love is like, I'm going to help you and support you because I care about you, as opposed to, ooh, you shouldn't be in love with this other person. So it's a very nice contrast in like genuine love as opposed to evil, greedy love.
Well, and a lot of what she admires about him is his sincerity toward Zhao Longnu. So if he were to sort of just say, hey, I like you better, and end up with her, it would almost undercut the thing that she likes about him. So, but the thing I find fascinating about her character is how much she mirrors Yangor. They both come from really terrible parentage. Her parentage is considerably worse once we get deep into it, I think, in a lot of ways. But basically, they both have a horrible father, and they have this struggle. And Yangor's struggle plays out over the course of the book, but hers we see over the course of these episodes, where she's trying to be a loyal daughter or a loyal son to her horrible father, and there's this conflict because despite being the product of this terrible person, they're both basically good people. And so there's something, number one, I think just very interesting about the idea that you don't necessarily, you can have this person who's like a completely virtuous despite their environment, despite their parentage, and also that that I don't know, that there's this perfect pairing of the two of them. I find her like just a fascinating character in the book. She's probably the character that gets the shortest end of the stick in terms of like how much you want things to work out for her because she's such a nice person. And there's a scarcity of characters like her.
There is. Well, yeah. I mean, when she first showed up, I was like, oh no, she's going to be like some kind of like love triangle complication thing that's going to make things worse. Right before he finds his goo, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be something bad. And it's like, oh no, it completely took me by surprise in a nice way. So it's good plot development. But yeah, I'm really involved in the way things are kind of rolling out at the moment. I mean, right now it's a little hard to talk because we're at another cliffhanger now. It's like, what's going to happen now with her helping him? Well, I believe the scene ended with him trying to get the antidote, and then the antidote was missing.
Yes,
it's just the empty chamber.
No, we do know that. And I guarantee you it's going to get... There's some very interesting surprises in the next couple of episodes. So I think I'm very curious to get what your reaction will be on those. But yeah, I should have mentioned we end with them trying to get the antidote. And also something really important happens after he's poisoned. Gong Soon tries to get Zhao Longnu to agree to marry him by threatening Yangor with poison from the passion flower, saying he'll die in 36 days without an antidote.
Yeah.
And she at first tries to sort of go along with it just so she can get the antidote, but he's like, "Oh, no, you have to consummate this marriage before I'll give you the antidote." And so she ends up throwing herself into the flower. They basically throw all these thorns onto Yangor, and she throws herself into the thorns with Yangor, and so they both end up poisoned. No, it's probably not the smartest thing, because now if they want to get out of this, they need to get 2 antidotes. So
yeah, that's true. I don't know that it was carefully planned, but but yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the point where Gong Sun really goes over the top with his villainy. It's like he's not even there's just no way you can interpret anything he's doing in a honorable way at all at that point. It's just like, yeah, you're just
all I'm gonna say is just wait. just wait on this guy.
The best is still
I
to
don't
come.
know if they perfectly match the books, but I think they get pretty close. And he's one of the most spectacular characters in the story.
Well, he is a really good character. I gotta say, the actor playing him and everything, he is making a fantastic villain at the moment.
He walks that line perfectly, because when you first meet him, you can kind of believe him as this sort of nice vegetarian guy, but then just a slight change of lighting and you buy him as a villain. And I love how so one thing I did want to talk about is a lot of the music that's in this show is taken from other soundtracks, and 2 of the soundtracks that we hear a lot of these episodes is, number 1, the Transformers soundtrack, that sort of that very soaring, the one.
I knew that was something. I was like, couldn't place it.
But what I was wondering is, because I was thinking about it, I was like, the context is so different.
A little bit.
Yeah, that it has a completely different. It lands differently than it does in the Transformers. It's really different to have because Transformers is almost more like science fiction, and this is more like a historical wuxia piece. So you get, I don't know, I just feel like it really works. They do a very good job of selecting the music, but you have to dissociate it from its original source if you're familiar with it.
See, I've never actually seen those movies. I mean, I've heard that music before, but I didn't know where it came from.
I mean, I'll let you form your own conclusions. I enjoyed the first Transformers movie, and after that, I had very little enjoyment. So
yeah, I don't know. I'm just a little bit too old to be too much into the Transformers. Maybe about a year.
Well, see, for me, I was like exactly in the zone they were going for, because I grew up on the Transformers cartoon, and the thing I remember about watching that in the theater is you get in there and you realize, oh my God, this is the same guy that did Optimus Prime's voice in the original cartoon, and it was like the first wave of nostalgia movies. So it wasn't like we were accustomed to that kind of treatment at the time. But either way, there's a huge transition getting it from that context into this one. The other music though that they selected was the 1992 Dracula soundtrack, and you hear traces of it, and we'll hear more of it as this goes on. And that I think the context fits perfectly. Like this guy.
Yeah, it does.
It
does.
Like he definitely has like a Dracula vibe, the way that they're presenting him in this. Even though he's a vegetarian, it's almost like an inverse Dracula.
But I guess to bring a role-playing game context to this too, it's like there's a hobby where you're often playing music in the background to go with things, and it's like you're borrowing music, so it's like you've got to walk that line. It's like you don't want to put on something that's too recognizable. Everyone thinks of this movie rather than I don't know. It's just something I can relate to, having to work entirely from pre-existing music.
Well, I used to play the Dracula soundtrack in all of my Ravenloft games, to the point that I have a feeling anybody who played in my campaigns, when they hear those blaring horns, they're just please make it stop. But yeah, so I don't know. I thought the music choices was interesting. I thought that the whole Jubatong thing was nice. Now, this was the first time we saw him in this series, right? This was the first time that he came
Yeah,
on screen. And you had
yeah.
mentioned that you recognized him instantly, even though it's not the same.
Instantly,
Yeah,
yeah, just from the Brave Archer movies. Even though it's a different actor, I'm just like, oh, there's Sue Vuitton. It was just no question in my mind who it was.
and it's something I like about this series is like they do a really good job over time of really getting down. This is how the character is portrayed, and this is like the costuming. This is the demeanor. This is the acting,
Yeah.
and and you can sort of see it kind of like if you watch like the original performances and then see it get built up on. And so as soon as Lee Mocho walks on the screen, you know who it is. As soon as Jubatong, utters a word, you know exactly who it is. But also,
As soon as Master Huang showed up, I like knew who that was, and it's just all these classic characters come back, and you just, yep, that's the person.
it's like, and I think the example you gave when we were talking before was Santa Claus. It's like
Yeah.
it's Santa Claus no matter who's in the outfit, and it's that kind of a thing. And I just find it interesting because even though this is new to you,
Yeah.
it's you immediately got who it was. It wasn't just from seeing Brave Archer that one time.
Yeah, these characters, they do have iconic power that you don't need to grow up for them to achieve that level. They just work like that.
And I think to a degree, a lot of it is kind of deeply rooted stuff. Like something about Jubatong feels right.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It feels like, okay, I've known somebody like Jubatong, or it's just something that we all kind of can relate to instantaneously. And I think it's the same with all the other characters. He really just does it, even though they're all really unique. Like one of his goals when he was writing his books, he said, was he wanted to always make a character that had never been done before. And he didn't know if he succeeded, but that was always his goal. And so I think even despite that being his goal, there's something very familiar about all of them.
Yeah, well, Jupatong's interesting. I mean, I'd say what makes him unique is, I mean, he is so childlike and frivolous, but he's just got such a seriousness about his martial arts at the same time. So there's just this innate contradiction to him that makes him a fascinating character. It's like there's just one thing he's serious about.
And it feels like all of the character elements of like all of their personality traits, they all complement the center somehow. Like because Wuxia is filled with eccentric characters, and there are lots of ways people do it. Sometimes it's just like almost like a random collection of eccentric traits. But with these characters, they're a collection of eccentric traits, but they all form a very complete picture, I find.
Yeah.
So everything about Jubatong feels consistent, even if there is like that sort of weird contrast between these poles that exist in him.
Yeah. I just having him show up in this too. It's like him, Yangao watching him doing his things. It's just perfectly understandable. Yangao, I mean, he's frustrated with him at times, having to figure out about the bells, but he just really, really enjoys watching Zhao Patong. It's like they both have that rebellious streak. It's like this one thing they have in common there. It's like he just admires him on some level there, and that worked for me. So it's like I like seeing these old characters come back and seeing how the new characters react to them. I feel that's working very well.
I think that's one of the things that this story does really wonderfully. And I like the scene where Jubatong is captured and brought before Gong Sun, and he accuses Jubatong of stealing a variety of objects. And Jubatong is outraged by the claim, even though we know Jubatong stole all this stuff. And he strips down. In the book, he strips down completely naked. In this one, they leave on his pants, but he goes around showing everybody like his private parts. And he's saying, but the interesting thing about this scene is Jubatong's, like, the thing that is really motivating him throughout all these scenes is he is furious that this old decrepit man is marrying this young woman, and he just senses there's something really wrong about this arrangement. And so when he strips down, he's saying, look, I might be naked, but I'm as pure as the day I was born, unlike you dirty old man. And so and I just love that he's using this like really profane gesture to slap Gong Sun in that way.
I know. It's that yeah, that scene, that whole scene was fantastic. I mean, from the lead up of him, being in disguise at first and the reveal and everything, and then the whole beard fight. It's
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of we're glossing over so much. The fighting in this is there's a fight with Yu Wang where Yangor is trying to cut off a bit of his beard. That's sort of like the stakes that they set for the fight, and I love the exchange where I think the fight starts out with Zhu Batong and Yu Wang, and then it progresses and it becomes Yangor against Yu Wang, but it's always about Yu Wang's beard and he says, there's this great line where he says like, oh well, my beard is a little bit long, I guess I do need a trim. It's just these great exchanges of dialogue. And yeah, so and then we obviously get we end up in as we said, at a cliffhanger situation, and
yeah.
and it's we'll see what happens next time. One thing I did want to comment on, which we touched on, is Jin Loon's fence sitting. I think it's becoming pretty apparent what he's doing here. I don't know how clear it is at this stage on your end, but
Yeah, they even stated at one point, I forget who he was talking to, but someone's like, "Oh, I see you're just waiting to see what happens, and you're going to jump in, after it all resolves." I forget who the conversation was with,
well,
but it was explicitly stated at one point in the show.
yeah, because during that period where Zhao Longnu wasn't recognizing Yangor, Yangor says I think he says something to Jinlun like, "Hey, you've seen her, you know that it's her, don't you?"
Yeah,
And he's
yeah.
like, "Well, I don't know. It's so hard to tell from the distance." And he just like really kind of doesn't involve himself. And all it would have taken was him saying, "Yeah, that's her," and it would have tilted the whole. Everybody would have kind of gone to Yangor's side. So I think that it's interesting that Jin Loon is using this tactic, but it's also interesting to me that he's really shooting himself in the foot with this tactic because
Yeah.
he could really win over Yangor. I mean, like they're
Yeah.
both united in trying to kill Guo Jing. It's obvious that that aside from that, the only other thing Yangor values is Zhao Longnu, and so obviously Jin Loon is concerned about them teaming up and becoming a threat to him. But at the same time, if he wants to get on Yangor's good side, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, well, he cares more about Zhao Nu than he does about the revenge against, avenging his father. It's like as soon as the bells show up, it's like, oh, I'm going off and dealing with
Yeah.
this. It's like forget that. So it's like he's basically, messing with Yang Gao on the thing he really cares about. And the other thing is he does care about that. I'm not saying he doesn't, but yeah, it definitely is going to hurt his relationship with Yang Gao. Well, I believe so, but we'll see what happens.
What did you think about Passionless Valley as a setting? Because this is like a real location that
Oh, yeah. I mean, the set design or whatever they're doing there, it's a really really nice, evocative location. Definitely, I think they've done a great job with that. It does feel like they've gone to this very exotic, hidden location. So it's yeah. I think they're doing a great job with that.
Yeah, one thing I like, there's two things that really stand out in the way the show does it for me. Number one, and this is in the book, is the passion flowers, which are,
Yeah.
they sort of, they have a number of features. So number one, the thorns on them, if you get pricked by them, they 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 cause you to suffer excruciating pain when you think of the person you love. But the flowers themselves, when they eat the petals, I think they're sweet and then they turn bitter, and it's sort of like a metaphor for love.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I like that this valley is sort of defined by the foliage in that way, and also the look of the sect. They all dress in green and they use nets and they have this very sort of nature, sort of out in the woods type vibe. You could almost mistake them for Robin Hood's Merry Men. They have that kind of a look. Do you know what I mean? And I think it really works because it's so distinct from everything else. There's not really many organizations that we've seen so far that look like this. And the nets are a very unusual weapon too. So
Yeah, well, it's kind of it kind of has a nice symbolic value because Gonsun is such he's such a subtly controlling person. So it's like having nets be the thing his followers all use. It's just like, yeah, that's what he just wants to control everyone around him in every way, down to their emotions.
Well, and what I like about it is Passionless Valley's whole thing is they're vegetarians. They don't believe in like shedding blood, and it's largely related to their kung fu. But they're that so like he even when he was being villainous early on, he was sort of reluctant to shed blood on his wedding day. He was
Yeah.
he was at least making a show of it. And the net kind of is that same thing where looked in a certain light, it seems to represent the merciful side of the but then when you look at it like you said through that other light of no, this is really about his controlling nature, and it's like the perfect weapon for going, not that he uses the net himself, his followers do, but it's a perfect sort of symbol of who he is. He first presents himself as this merciful force, and then you realize that no, he's not. And so yeah, I don't know. I really like the Passionless Valley stuff, and we get an interesting bit where one of the justifications he uses to try to control Zhao Longnu is he tells her that they have a fated relationship. He talks about, and I think this is his I don't know because we're going by subtitles, but I think they're talking about Yuan Fen here, which is this idea of these entanglements between different people that can occur over many lifetimes, and he's saying we have fate, we have this this connection, and so and he draws on a lot of excuses, and they get thinner and thinner the more things go on, and until he's sort of forced to use just blunt force.
Yeah.
But it starts out with manipulation. He begins with soft power, and then he progresses to hard power over the course of the show.
Yeah, it's it's interesting development. But yeah, I mean there's just a lot in play at the moment, and I mean it's I'm still very involved in the show. Once again, it's like the last few times we've watched it, it's like I get to the last episode and I'm like, man, it's just these cliffhangers. Well, they're doing a great job with them.
We are in for some treats in the coming episodes. I will say that.
Excellent.
There's some good things coming down the road. So we I think we've covered everything. I don't think there's a whole lot more for us to go over. We'll be back on with another episode of the Return of Condor Heroes podcast. This Friday, we're going to be doing Painted Skin: The Resurrection on Wuxia Weekend, and if anybody wants to, they can go to our Patreon page and they can make a pledge. We have a bunch of different reward levels, and some of the reward levels will let you do things like vote on movie selection at certain times of the month, or vote on themes, and do things like suggest movies that we add to our backlist. So you feel free to check out our Patreon. And also we'll have another episode of Wuxia Workshop in the Game Lab up, hopefully in the near future. So until then, we will talk to you later.